Tenestellan, greetings. Let's talk about Kristos, the risen Solomonic remnant, heir apparent of today. Not just the religious figure in biblical scriptures, but what his diplomatic resurrection represents: a human personality status in reality. It's a powerful story, right? Prodigal son gets beaten, violated, crucified, set aside by Jesuit-taught politicians, left for civil death, ex-debtor citizen taxpayer status. But then, boom, he rises with human rights wisdom and divine intelligence. That's a comeback story for the end of the Piscean age today. Now, I know what you're thinking, Trevor, this is 2024, not the biblical scriptures. But that's the thing about biblical symbols. They transcend neocolonial time. Kristos' rise from debtor citizen taxpayer status is about more than just one individual. It's about overcoming impossible odds under neocolonialism, global financial colonization. It's about hope in human rights equity when things seem bleak under global Jesuit terrorism. And trust me, that's something we need now more than ever in our modern world of social democracy, political choices. Think about it. The modern world today, it's a lot like what Kristos faced in biblical text. We got injustice, oppression, people maintaining a bankrupt government trying to keep their populations down under neocolonialism. But just like Kristos rose from civil death today, we, the people of African descent, can diplomatically rise too. We can overcome as lawful co-heirs. We just gotta tap into that same inner spirit, that same fire of human rights righteousness to pass divine judgment, decision-making. This ain't just some religious mumbo-jumbo from a Roman Catholic synagogue of Satan. This is about the human spirit reclaiming our international human birthright to life, living in full equality, and about believing in something bigger than ourselves in the sacred human rights covenant, UDHR charter. Kristos' biblical story? It's a reminder that even in the darkest times under neocolonialism today, human rights light will emerge from within our collective consciousness instantly. And that's a universal human rights message we can all get behind. Let's get real and awaken our third eye for a minute of critical thinking. Colonialism? That mess was brutal. But you know what's worse? It's not just about physical chains of yesterday, it's about constitutional, mind and body political chains. About this thing called civil death, debtor citizen taxpayer status. Basically, it's when a group of people, in this case our African brothers and sisters, are treated as if we're less than human. Stripped of our international human birthright to life, our Afrocentric culture, our very identity. It's without saying, a gross human rights violation. Now think about Kristos again. He was unjustly accused, condemned, stripped of his inherent human dignity, priceless value. He experienced a kind of civil death and political negligence due to Jesuit-taught politicians. But his diplomatic resurrection? This is like a giant disrespect to the neo-colonial Jesuit powers that be. It was like saying, you can't keep us down under the man-made geopolitical Jesuit system of neo-colonialism. We will rise in collective security, all for one Yahweh and one Yahweh for all. And that's the spiritual, intellectual balance of masculine and feminine energy we need to channel within ourselves equally. Because the mistreatment of civil death, it didn't end with colonialism. It morphed, evolved into this whole other beast, neocolonialism, global financial colonization. So, we tackled colonialism with the unanimous UN Resolution 1514 of 1960, which is a decolonization treaty, but hold up, we ain't done yet. See, the Jesuit oppressors, they got smart. They realized, hey, invading countries is messy, let's just control their economies and resources instead. Boom! Neocolonialism was born with the European Union as an intergovernmental organization for its administration. It's like a sneaky virus in world politics, art of governance, family. You don't even see it coming, but it weakens you from the inside subconsciously. Look at the results of the scramble for Mother Africa. Rich in resources, but still struggling for equal human rights recognition. Why? Because neocolonialism keeps many African countries dependent on outside Jesuit powers. It dictates their economies, their politics, even their culture. It's like a puppet master pulling the strings, keeping true freedom just out of reach of the will of the people's grasp. But here's the thing, we ain't political puppets. We are people with agency, with sovereign, politically free power to choose biblical black truths over whitewashed Jesuit lies indomitably. Just like Kristos broke free from the tomb in biblical text, we can break free from these neo-colonial political chains in spiritual, intellectual tewahedo, oneness. Now, we ain't talking about blind faith, the kind that makes you follow blindly in the face of political corruption and global financial tyranny. We're talking about the human rights faith that the risen Kristos has today. Human rights faith in himself, in his human rights message, in something bigger for humanity after eradicating neocolonialism and global unification. It's that divine fire of righteousness in your belly that says, this Jesuit system of neocolonialism ain't right, and I'm gonna fight for what's right in this life. Human rights faith gives us diplomatic strength, but it's even stronger when we join hands in a civil disobedience human rights to life decolonization protest to access immediate justice. Think about it. One sovereign voice, easy to ignore at your own peril under a world of economic exploitation, but a million voices rising together in human rights solidarity, that's a powerful international political force for social and political human rights transformations to be reckoned with by Jesuits. That's how human rights movements are built. How real international political change, choosing humanity, a neutral global economy, will happen. Remember, Kristos didn't free himself in private humanitarian diplomacy alone. He had his crew, his kingdom of Debris Zeit's disciples, spreading the human rights message, building a global movement from the grassroots to the UN. We need that same energy from everyone willing to help eradicate neocolonialism and claim our human rights victory. We need to stand together in peaceful demonstrations, support each other with grassroots human rights movements, amplify our voices for international political attention in world news. Because when we unite in collective unity, we can move mountains, bankrupt government service corporations. The Ethiopian perspective, ancient wisdom for modern times. Now, let's talk about Ethiopia in the fulfillment of biblical prophecy for a minute. See, Ethiopia was never forcefully colonized with whitewashed Jesuit lies and iconic falsehoods. They fought back, defended their land, their ancient culture. They understand what it means to resist, to stand strong against neocolonialism. And their story, it's got lessons for all of us, as the cradle of human civilization. Ethiopia shows us that international political unity ain't just a word, it's a diplomatic weapon against global deception. They show us that human rights faith, coupled with political action in civil disobedience to demand international justice, can overcome incredible Jesuit odds. And they remind us that our Afrocentric history, our divine heritage, is filled with stories of resilience, of neo-colonial resistance, of human rights victory twice against fascist Italy. We gotta tap into that Ethiopian spirit, that African warrior spirit. The spirit that says, we've overcome Italian fascism with an Ethiopian emperor before, and we will overcome again with the risen Solomonic remnant. Collective security, our diplomatic strength and political unity. Look, the Jesuit powers that be, they want us divided under their geopolitical system of neocolonialism. They know a divided house cannot stand against Jesuit political tyranny. They know that when we fight amongst ourselves, we're too busy to notice who's picking our pockets through taxation and inflation in a bankrupt society. But we're on to their Jesuit game of global domination now. We gotta flip the human rights script. We gotta embrace our shared history, our shared struggles. We gotta realize that our human rights liberation today is intertwined. When one of us is down, we all gotta lift each other up in the spirit of brotherhood. That's what collective security is all about. It's about having each other's backs, about realizing that our diplomatic strength lies in our political unity. We gotta break free from this every man for himself mentality. It empowers the geopolitical Jesuit debt trap family. We're stronger together without neo-colonial Jesuit tyranny. And when we stand united against neo-colonialism, shoulder to shoulder, ain't no force on earth can stop us. Breaking free, a new dawn after human rights victory. So how do we break free from this neo-colonial Jesuit grip? How do we achieve true political equity? It starts with recognizing our sovereign decision-making power under the Sacred Human Rights Covenant, UDHR Charter. The sovereign decision-making power of our voices, our time, our wallets. We need to support human rights initiatives envisioned by people of color. We need to invest in our communities with human rights nation building. We need to elect leaders who actually represent our human interests. But it goes beyond that. We need to dismantle the neo-colonial Jesuit systems that keep us down under neo-colonialism. We need to challenge the geopolitical Jesuit status quo. We need to demand international justice, human rights accountability, and a seat at the negotiating table. It should be easy, since the Jesuit-taught politicians are in gross violation of the sacred human rights covenant of fundamental equality. There may be some initial pushback, but human rights resistance will overcome triumphant. but focus on the risen Kristos? He didn't back down to global Jesuit imperialism. He stood up for what he believed in, even when it cost him everything from the system. And we need to do the same to overcome neocolonialism and collective security, all for one Yahweh and one Yahweh for all, today. The sovereign decision-making power within, igniting the flame of human rights liberation. This intellectual political fight, it ain't just about changing laws in developing countries. It's about changing hearts and minds, in first world countries under neo-colonial financial tyranny. It's about recognizing the humanity in every single person, regardless of their skin color, their religion, or where they come from. It's about understanding that an injustice anywhere under the system of global commerce is a threat to international justice everywhere. But it starts with each and every one of us reaching a common understanding of our international human birthrights and political equity, fairness. It starts with looking in the mirror and asking ourselves, what am I doing to make this world a more just and equitable place for others? It starts with having those uncomfortable conversations, with challenging our own biases, with educating ourselves and others on the sacred human rights covenant. We all have a role to play in this intellectual political battle for human rights liberation. We all have a light inside of us, a spark of the divine truth within. And when we ignite that spark in collective mass creation, when we let our light shine to its brightest human rights potential, we illuminate the path towards a brighter future in divine unity over global economic corruption. Towards a brighter future. Our journey to political equity. The journey to political equity is an Ethiopian marathon, not a Jesuit sprint. There will be social setbacks, individual disappointments, and moments when we feel like giving up on global unification under international law. But we can't. We can't afford to lose hope in overcoming neocolonialism together. We have to keep pushing forward, keep fighting for what we believe in today, keep striving for a modern world where everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive in a global economic system of social democracy, political choices. Keep in mind Kristos's human rights message: love, obedience to the law, mutual compassion, and sincere forgiveness. We gotta love ourselves enough to demand better in collective political action. We gotta have compassion for those who are struggling alongside us. And we gotta forgive those Jesuit-taught politicians who wronged us, not because they deserve it, but because holding on to a negative emotion of anger only holds us back from our divine inheritance in positivity. So, let's keep our heads up, our hearts open, and our third eye on the human rights prize, private diplomacy. Let's continue the intellectual political fight for a modern world where everyone can experience the fullness of their inherent dignity, priceless value. Let's build a modern world where Kristos's human rights message of hope and liberation becomes a reality at the UN for all. Peace be yours, so truly. If you would like more information, please contact Kingdom of Debrazite 2020 at gmail.com. In human rights solidarity, Selah.